Today is another deep passage from the book of Hebrews, but it's also probably maybe the most obvious. Hebrews is a tough letter. It's hard. I mean, to just sit there and read it, if you don't have a really learned understanding of Jewish liturgies and their traditions and their worldviews and stuff like that, it can be very complicated. This is probably the most obvious passage in the whole book because it talks about Jewish sacrifices where they would regularly sacrifice, but in particular in certain feast days like Yom Kippur, like Passover, they would sacrifice these animals for the forgiveness of sins, and they'd have to do more animals and more animals and more animals and more animals. And the author is saying, but animals can't take away sins, and we already know this as a people, which is why in Psalm 40, so then he starts quoting Psalm 40, God says, sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you prepared for me. So already anticipated in their scriptures is a greater sacrifice that is to come, a body that you prepared for me. In burnt offerings and sin offerings you took no delight. Then I said, as is written of me in the scroll, behold, I come to do your will. And then the author of the Hebrews just takes the ball and crosses the finish line and says, and that's Jesus. Great. But where we can fall short or maybe stop short is a better way of saying it is like, yes, what Jesus did on the cross is definitive and once for all and has infinite value. And that's the sacrifice they were talking about. Good job, team. Let's get out of here. Hit the lights. But there's more that we can extract from that. God prepared a body for me too, right? I mean, he formed me in the womb with a plan in mind. So in some sense, I am to participate in this very mystery by the fact that I have a body and I have a will, so that I too could say, behold, I have come to do your will, and I am to live that will in the flesh. It's not meant to just simply be a desire like, oh God, I just want to please you in all things and whatever you ask. No, what is the actual way that I am concretely surrendering my will to God so that in all things I am doing that which is pleasing to him and mortifying those parts of me that I know lead me away from him. See, St. Thomas Aquinas, whom we're commemorating today, of all the amazing things he did, he was alive in the 13th century, one of the greatest minds that have ever existed in the life of the church, was so brilliant that one of the greatest works he ever wrote, the Summa Theologica, he what do you call it when you're speaking it? Dictated it. He dictated it where four writers were sitting there while he's walking around in a square just writing, objection, response, objection, and they're all just like drafting this down. And this whole corpus, which most people would find impossible to understand today, he was writing for beginners of theology, like teenagers. What makes him great isn't anything that he wrote. It's the reason why he wrote it. He had a passion for truth and put his entire existence at the service of that passion. And it wasn't just truth as an intellectual appetite, it was truth as a person. He believed in his heart that this was pleasing to God if he did it. And he wanted to be associated with anything that related to truth because he found in all of it an encounter with the person of Jesus Christ. In fact, when he was struggling with an answer to an objection or a theological conundrum, the other friars, the Dominicans, would see him in the chapel talking to the tabernacle with his question. He would go to the fount of truth, receive the truth he needed, and then he was so enthused by it, he dedicated his life to handing it on. That's what makes him great. But that's what God wanted Thomas to do. What is God asking you to do with the mind that you have, the body that he has prepared for you, and the free will that guides it? So that in all things, not only will you come to discover the joy of Jesus Christ, but be a missionary to hand that on.